How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 2.
Well. Welcome. It's Eric Erickson here. Oh, first of all, you can call in 877-973-7425. Ladies and gentlemen, remember the media's favorite Irishman. Oh, this story, how the plot thickens. Seamus Culleton is the Irishman that much of the American media cried about and fawned over, that this was so Kafkaesque. He was stuck in an ICE detention facility in Texas. He claims his signature was not on the deportation order. He claims it was a fraud, that he did not sign it. Seamus came to the United States in a visa waiver program. He overstayed his visa. Abby Phillips on Struggle Session on CNN, Susan Gleiser of the New York Times or of New Yorker and others rushed out and talked about how this is Kafkaesque and you're allowed to amend your visa petition. He's getting married. Don't they support families? He's getting married. Seamus overstayed his stay. He claimed he was in a modern-day concentration camp. He's 38 years old, made global headlines describing the hellhole conditions in which he's being kept for almost 5 months with 70 other detainees, almost none of whom speak English like him. He's from Glenmore in County Kilkenny, and he's been locked up in El Paso, Texas, since he was detained for overstaying a 90-day visa that he got back in 2009, and he never went home. He stayed in the United States and ultimately met a gal, and they've decided to get married, and then they came calling and, well, round him up. Well, now we know why Mr. Culleton, Seamus, didn't want to go back to Ireland. The Irish Daily Mail can now confirm that Seamus Culleton was charged in 2008 with several offenses in Ireland before immigrating to the United States. The charges were possession of drugs with intent for sale or supply, possession of drugs for personal consumption, and obstructing a Garda in the course of their duty. Mr. Culleton failed to appear at a New Ross District Court in County Wexford for his hearing, and a bench warrant was requested. However, it was never issued as he left the jurisdiction. He also appeared in the same court in April 2008 for being extremely drunk in public, and Garda detained him for his own safety. Speaking to the Irish Daily Mail last night, Mr. Culleton's U.S. lawyer said that she only became aware of the charges against him yesterday. She said it's a warrant that was issued after he came to the United States. I cannot speak further without knowing the details of the case. A warrant does not equal criminal conviction. Today is the first time that I am aware of anything like that. I can't speak more on something that I don't know about. I have not spoken to Mr. Culleton since this broke today. Mr. Culleton's been pleading with the Irish government to help him get out of detention. Now, I have a question. It is a relevant question. Will the national media actually go back and revisit the story? Will Susan Gleiser of the New Yorker or New York Magazine, who's been claiming how Kafkaesque it was for him to be stuck in this detention facility, will she say anything? Will Abby Phillips say anything? The National Press Corps highlighted this story as an abuse. The National Press Corps highlighted this story to show just how awful the Trump administration is in dealing with these sorts of people. How unfair it is. How cruel it is. How unusual it is. They held up Seamus Culleton as the poster child because he's a white guy from Ireland. And we thought that the Trump administration was so racist, we were going to let all the white guys from Ireland stay. We weren't going to deport them. And lo and behold, not only are we going to deport them, we're holding them in El Paso, Texas. By the way, Mr. Culleton could go back to Ireland at any moment he wanted. And in fact, he had begun a green card process in the United States when he was detained. Never mind, he overstayed his visa. And for all the people who say, well, that's fixable. No, he was on a visa waiver program for which there was no fix. And a judge ordered him removed from the United States, and he tried to stay. He tried to avoid the law here. He tried to avoid justice here. And it turns out he fled to the United States to avoid justice in Ireland. Is anyone going to shed the facts on this story? I highly doubt it. I highly doubt it. In fact, what I actually think is going to happen is that the Democrats aren't going to be able to pivot at all on this issue, even as the Trump administration is. Tom Homan is a picture of competence. This was highlighted by the White House. This is Tom Homan at a press conference.
As President Trump has said from day one, we're going to prioritize the public safety threats. Again, but prioritization doesn't mean forget about everybody else. That means you have a criminal alien here and non-criminal here. The criminal always comes first because he's the biggest threat to the communities. We're going to continue to force immigration law, but we're going to get back to the footprint here, the normal footprint here. But there will be some security teams staying here, the QRFs, until we're assured that those agitators' incidents either stay low or further decline. I'm not going to remove everybody out of the safety of our officers, but like I said, and Operation Metro Surge is ending. And in the next week, we're going to deploy the officers here in detail back to their home stations or other areas of the country that are needed. But we're going to continue to enforce immigration law. That's what the American people voted for. But it has to be a priority of criminals. And look, I hear all the hate about, you should arrest everybody. Well, we are. But we're prioritizing those who are the biggest threat to our community. The rapists, the murderers, the child molesters. That's the right thing to do. But I'll say it again. President Trump made a promise of mass deportation, and that's what this country's going to get. But it's smart law enforcement to do target enforcement operations. Now, I've heard people attacking me using the word targeted. I sat for the last 2 months when I watched this operation, daily press briefings are talking about targeted Title VIII operations. Nothing's changed other than we're going to make sure they're targeted and make sure we know who we're going for, what their immigration record, what's their criminal history. That comes first. But enforcement of Title VIII is not going to end.
So they're going to do mass deportations like the president wants, but they're going to start by targeting the people who have the criminal records first, the ones who have already proven to be dangers. Now, you might be wondering, how is it that we have rapists and child abusers and drug dealers who are illegal aliens who have been found guilty of these crimes roaming the streets of America? You may be wondering that. And the answer is that in some progressive states, once they've served their sentences, they were let out of prison. They were not deported. I realize that makes no sense to you. You can't understand it. You God bless you for not being as broken as progressives are in your thinking. Because you see, the progressive thought is that, well, they've been punished, so their punishment is over. We can't deport them because they served their time. And it would be a punishment to deport them when we've already punished them. That would be double jeopardy. This is the insane thinking of the left, as opposed to maybe the child rapist, the pedophile, maybe the rapist, maybe the burglar, maybe the gang-related drug dealer should be deported from the country once they've served their time. In red states, that happens. In blue states, it doesn't, increasingly. So that's Tom Homan's point on targeted enforcement operations. Go after the people charged with violent crimes who are illegal aliens. Go after the ones who have been convicted and served their time and been let out of prison before ICE could round them up, because that happens in states like Minnesota, where in Minnesota, some communities like Minneapolis bar the police from notifying ICE when someone's time has been served and they are being released from incarceration. Yes, in Minnesota, the default is that when someone serves their time in prison, when they are an illegal alien, you then notify ICE. But in the city of Minneapolis, the police are prohibited from notifying ICE when that happens, and they release the illegal alien back into the community. And those are the people Homan's going to target. And I'm real sorry to those of you on the left if you're upset by this, but Homan is right. And I'm real sorry to those of you on the right who are upset by this, because it's not just a mass roundup, but the mass roundup was making mistakes. And it was causing problems for the Trump administration. But you put competence in charge and you focus on the bad guys. It's really hard when the left starts complaining to look at this and say they're doing it wrong. Look now at Seamus Culleton. The American media tried to make him the sympathetic face of immigration deportation policy gone wrong, and it turns out he fled to this country to beat drug charges in Ireland. Now he's going to have to go back and deal with that. Good job to him trying to get press attention on his plight. Now the Irish know where he is. Of course, it's Ireland. He'll go back there and the socialists in charge of Ireland will say, oh, yeah, you've been punished by being stuck in the United States. The problem for the Democrats here in the run-up to the midterms is we're February 12th. The midterms are the beginning of November. If Tom Homan proves the competence of ICE and the Democrats keep campaigning on defunding ICE and shutting deportations down, they're going to have a problem. In fact, tonight, the Department of Homeland Security is going to shut down. Tonight, the Department of Homeland Security will shut down. The House of Representatives is not going to vote on reopening reopening the Department of Homeland Security. The Democrats have refused to participate in votes. So the Department of Homeland Security is going to shut down tonight. And do you know what's going to happen? What's going to happen is the deportations will continue. The deportations by Border Patrol and by ICE will continue because they've been funded. What hasn't been funded is TSA. So when you show up at the airport in the next few days, you may have a backup. You may have a long line. Part of me actually wonders if the TSA agents are just going to say, screw this, we're not going through this again. We're just not going to show up for work. And air traffic in the United States will grind to a halt. And good luck getting the Republicans to agree to the Democratic demands on ICE when they've already changed. And the Republicans can come out and say, we've stopped mass roundups. We're targeting the criminals. You heard Tom Homan. It's the Democrats who haven't changed. Good luck. Good luck to the Democrats in November as the TSA agents walk off the job, as the FEMA agents are left unfunded to deal with the natural disasters. Good luck. The Democrats are, to a degree, if the Republicans can play it right, walking into a trap by refusing to fund the Department of Homeland Security when the deportations are funded and TSA is not. Good luck. They might want to rethink this, but they can't, because it is not just the progressive activists, but the donor class of the Democratic Party who is emotionally invested in standing up against ICE and deportations. And they highlighted the sympathetic Irishman who was to be wed in the United States, who was working on his green card, having overstayed his visa. And it turns out he was in this country because he fled Ireland and drug charges in Ireland. And he is who the Democrats chose to become their poster boy for ICE being mean, someone running away from drug charges in Ireland who they thought was a sympathetic person. And I guarantee you most of the press is not going to revisit this story because they don't want you to know the new facts after they built him up as some sort of serious victim. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I have bad news. Sorry to bring you the bad news. The Dow is now less than 50,000. I mean, that was Pam Bondi's deflection yesterday on why she shouldn't have to answer the question of why haven't you prosecuted any of the people on the Epstein list? Well, the Dow is over 50,000, over $50,000. It was so embarrassing. I genuinely believe it is disqualifying to Pam Bondi. Now, the president, of course, is going to defend her today, which she's doing. But, I mean, literally, she is asked, why haven't you prosecuted any of the people on the Epstein list? And this is her answer. I'm not making it up. This is her in her own words.
The Dow right now is over. The Dow is over $50,000. I don't know why you're laughing. You're a great stock trader, as I hear, Raskin. The Dow is over 50,000 right now. The S&P at almost 7,000. And the NASDAQ smashing records. Americans' 401ks and retirement savings are booming. That's what we should be talking about.
Really? No, you're there for a hearing on the Jeffrey Epstein situation and the victims. You know, this is what I wrote this morning on the night of September 21st, 1788. Austrian hussars scouting for the Ottoman army stumbled upon gypsies who offered them schnapps. The Austrians got drunk, encountered part of their infantry, refused to share the alcohol, and a fight broke out. One soldier fired his gun. The rest of the army presumed the Ottomans were there. The Austrian general of artillery thought the Ottoman cavalry was upon him, and he ordered the artillery to fire. The Battle of Karansabas would go down in history as the world's worst friendly fire incident. Holy Roman Emperor Joseph II, so demoralized from what happened, ordered his soldiers to withdraw. 2 days later, the Ottoman army finally did show up and found dead and wounded Austrians everywhere. They killed their own side, thinking it was the Ottomans while they were drunk. At least Joseph II and his generals could think, well, thank God Pam Bondi hadn't been born yet. The self-inflicted wounds would have been far worse. Remember, the whole reason we're doing the Epstein stuff the way we're doing it now is because of Pam Bondi's serial screw-ups going back to the beginning of the Trump administration when she trotted the gadflies in and gave them the white binders that had no new information. That's why we're here now. She needs to go away. And you need to go to Renai, go to talkingtankless.com and get yourself a tankless water heater. I keep getting questions about these. Listen, you don't have to be doing a new house. We had 2 electric water heaters in our house, one for upstairs, one for downstairs. We got rid of them for a single Renai tankless water heater, and we have hot water that doesn't run out. The tanks, ultimately, you know, if you got a lot of kids in your house, they run out and then the water gets cold. With the tankless water heater, you never run out of hot water. Not only that, because we had electric water heaters, our power bill went down. Renai tankless water heaters give you hot water forever. As long as you got gas flowing, you can get the hot water. Go to talkingtankless.com. And by the way, when our power goes out, our tankless water heater still works because we have a UPS backup that it's connected to. And we don't even have a whole house generator. We have just one of those little computer ones that you can buy at Walmart for the tankless water heater. Go to talkingtankless.com. Talkingtankless.com. Get a tankless water heater today. Never run out of hot water again. To those of you on the phones, thank you for being patient. It is my time to go to you. The phone number for the rest of you, 877-973-7425. Let's begin in Dayton, Ohio with Steve. Welcome to the show, sir. How are you?
I'm good.
Welcome.
Well, thank you. This call was prompted by your piece on education in Philadelphia, specifically and more generally, and the role of the teachers' unions in it. And I have 2 comments. The first one is that the customers of teachers' unions are teachers.
Right.
As such, teachers' unions shouldn't be heard on anything except teachers' pay and working conditions. Instead, they, particularly at the leadership level, have bootstrapped themselves into being not merely the representatives of teachers regarding their pay and working conditions, but somehow to be the custodians of education and what it means to be educated as such. They have no warrant for this or no authority to do it, but yet somehow they've done it.
Mm-hmm.
The second comment is that they also claim to be the champions of human rights for some reason, and they should pay attention to Article 26 of the UN Declaration of Human Rights, which states in paragraph 3 that parents have a prior right to choose the type of education to be given to their children. So if they really want to go along with this, they're somehow going to have to give up their advocacy of human rights or decide. I don't know what they can really do.
Yeah,
with
look,
that.
I mean, and of course, they're not going to care. I mean, getting it from the UN as well, which is from the most anti-Semitic groups on the planet at this point.
Well, it's not the UN; it's the Universal Declaration of Human Rights.
Well, yeah,
the UN has kind of, at least the UN Human Rights Commission has, once again, unilaterally or somehow taken over as being the custodian of the Universal Declaration. But the appeal to human rights, that's another thing that's kind of up by its bootstraps.
Yeah, no kidding. And you know, so to your point, though, I mean, the teachers don't care, and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is not American law, although we've got treaties that reference it and stuff. The teachers just simply don't care. The teachers' unions see that schools are a vehicle for the indoctrination of kids, and that's why we should be shutting down teachers' unions in as many states as we can. And in right-to-work states, they are not nearly as strong as they are in forced union states. And in those states, they're holding kids hostage. But to your point, and very valid point, the teachers are their customer, not the students. They don't really care about the students. They masquerade with the help of the media and the Democrats to claim they do, but they don't. Look in San Francisco. They shut them down during COVID. Scores have gone down. And now the teachers are striking. They don't care about the students. In fact, they're actively discouraging parents from getting their kids tutoring in San Francisco right now. They don't want kids to get ahead. It's really awful to watch. Candy, welcome to the program. Candy, how are you?
I'm good. You haven't touched on this topic. I agree with all that you're saying, the SAVE Act, but what I want to do is bring light to the fact I know there are rules on the Senate and House floors. The language needs to stop because we can't be engaged to listen if we have to hear this much profanity. Mm-hmm. I don't know what you can do about just rudeness and screaming, but you know what? My grandson, my 7th grade grandson, takes civics. I would be mortified if the teacher turned it on yesterday at Eric Swalwell.
Yes.
Revels. And using the MF phrase. And they should be made. I know 4 or 5 years ago, remember when Pelosi introduced to the Rules Committee that no one could use male or female pronouns? Right. Luckily, that was not passed because it's stupid. But she didn't want people to say mother or grandfather.
Right.
I've already called the American people, and I really do believe that there's way more decent Americans than not. We need to flood the phones. I sat for 30 minutes and called a lot this morning, but it also needs to be on social media so these people see it. And when you meet your elected official and you know they do it, you can politely say, I'm really trying to listen, stay engaged, but I just would really appreciate you minus the profanity and the rudeness. Yeah. And it's the number one thing.
So,
I love Donald Trump.
Yeah.
I voted for him 3 times, but he ushered in this profanity. I mean, even horrible Obama didn't do it. I don't care that he's on basket. Teddy Roosevelt was, pretty wild. But if you're on our dime, which they are, to my knowledge, right. We pay for the house. We're paying. If you are on our dime across seas or in the House or in the Oval Office, then you need to clean up and be statesmanlike. And I don't care if you go on Joe Rogan. I mean, I listen to J.D. Vance, and between the two, I think they said the F word at least 1,000 times. Yeah. And I don't listen to Joe Rogan except like that. Or
listen, I agree with you completely. And one of the big issues here, too, is you're right. Like we can't take the president's press conferences live anymore on terrestrial radio without putting in a delay because the president is willing to say the S word, the F word, the B word in a press conference. And And these other guys think, well, because he does it, I'm going to signal that I'm a fighter like him to my base, and I'm going to embrace that language too. And they do it in these congressional hearings now. They simply do not care. And C-SPAN is in a terrible position where it airs these things live. And if we run this stuff now, we can't run it live because our members of Congress and the President of the United States use language that can't go out over the airwaves, and our kids don't need to be exposed to it. And they simply don't care anymore. They say, well, he does it, so I'm going to do it. Remember when you used to, we all grew up at a time where our parents said, well, if he's going to jump off a bridge, are you going to jump off a bridge? The answer to these days is like, yes, I guess if he's going to eat a bullet, I'm going to eat a bullet. I'm just going to follow along because he does it, I'm going to do it. We live in the dumbest times, in deeply unserious times. And I'm glad you called and raised the issue because, again, like yesterday, we couldn't have aired these hearings live because of the language these members of Congress were using over the airwaves in a hearing, the bickering back and forth, even Pam Bondi and her yelling and calling them names and them calling her. We live in deeply unserious times. David, you're going to be up next. Welcome to the show, David. How are you?
Good afternoon, sir. I'll try to make it brief for you. I wanted to zip it past you about what you were discussing on the bottom half of the last hour about voter ID. Mm-hmm. And I mentioned to your caller, I mentioned to my son several years ago, he got into a wreck and et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, he let his license expire. And I said, son, if you happen to be walking down the street, going to the grocery store, and a cop stops you and you don't have your ID, your butt's going to jail, dude. I guess you see my point I'm making. The screen caller saw the point I was making. Now, you have to have an ID, period, on your person in Georgia. So why not make that common sense of this point of voter ID with voting?
So, okay. Okay. Let me pause here, though, because I do have to correct you a little bit. That you do not have to have an ID on you if you're walking about. It's actually unconstitutional, and there's a Supreme Court decision.
I didn't know that. Thank you.
That so under the Constitution we have the Ninth Amendment is the penumbra amendment, that there are rights and they're not defined in the Constitution, but we know that they're there. One of the rights the Supreme Court has found is we have a right to travel in the United States, and we can't be impeded. And unless you have probable cause, you can't actually stop someone and ask them for their ID. However, to drive on the road, you are required to have a license. You have the right to go from point A to point B. But if you choose to take possession of a vehicle and drive on a taxpayer-funded road, then you have to have a license certifying you're qualified to drive on the road. If you're just walking, they can't stop you and ask you for your ID unless they have probable cause. That's a very well. Most people, I think, don't realize this because we're one of the very few countries, by the way, that has this right. It's one of the First Amendment and the right to travel unimpeded in the United States are two fundamental rights that we have, and the right to keep and bear arms that separate us from virtually every other country on planet Earth. It's why we are so unique. We have a fundamental right in the United States to travel unimpeded within the United States. If we want to get on a plane, we have to show an ID. If we want to drive a car, we have to show an ID. But if we choose to have someone else drive us from point A to point B, we don't have to have a license. We don't have to have ID. If I choose to walk from point A to point B, I don't have to have a license. I don't have to have photo ID because I have the right to travel in the United States unimpeded. Now, if I'm looking suspicious, if I'm looking like I'm causing trouble, I can get asked for ID. And if you say, well, I left it at home, you may have to answer some questions, but they can't really arrest you unless they have real cause to arrest you. But if I'm just walking down the road and I don't have my license with me, then I'm totally allowed to do that. And you and everyone else in the United States are totally allowed to do that. I can hop I'm in Georgia. I can go to Alabama, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, the bordering states, and cross those states. And they can't ask me for ID because I'm an American citizen and have a right to travel. But the moment I get behind a wheel and I'm on a road with that car, then I have to have a license. The moment I try to go to an airport and get on an airplane, I got to have a license. I got to have an ID at least. But if I'm just walking down the road and they have no reason to suspect me of anything, they don't have a right to stop me and ask for an ID. And again, it is I don't think people appreciate how unique the United States is in the world. The right to travel inside the United States. No other country, to my knowledge, has a right to travel unimpeded. In China, in the UK, in France, in Germany, you got to have an ID on you to travel. That's why so many people think we do here, because everywhere else you have to. We have a right to free speech in this country. I can, though I'm on broadcast radio, I can't. There are certain words I can't say, and you don't want me to say, that they're now saying in Congress live on TV that we can't air. But I have a right to stand on the street corner and say whatever I want to say, no matter how awful you think it is. Now, there can be consequences. If I defame someone, I can be sued for it. But in this country, it's hard to sue, for a famous person to sue for defamation. There are very few things. One of them is specifically accusing a famous person of the commission of a crime. That's why Donald Trump keeps winning these defamation cases when idiots accuse him of rape, because he's never been found guilty of rape, and they accuse him of that, and he can sue for defamation, and, well, they get in all sorts of trouble. We also have the right to keep and bear arms in this country. That's why the left-wing policy solutions on gun control in this country will never work unless you repeal the Second Amendment, and they don't seem to get it. We are unique by design and by history, and it sets us apart. And that's why, as much as I do share concerns about a lot of bad creeping things from Europe coming into the United States, that as long as we have a robust First Amendment, we are protected in this country. And free speech absolutism is actually a good thing in this country. And we should all appreciate the uniqueness of the United States. We are a country with flaws. Every country has flaws. But we need more speech, not less speech. And it's interesting that the elite in the world really want us to rethink the First Amendment, because they want to be able to control us, and they can't control us as long as we can compete for ideas. So one of the reasons you're seeing these right-wing groups spring up in Europe is because of, for example, the issue of immigration. They shut it down. You're not allowed to talk about it. In Great Britain, the government, the politicians, they have pressured the National Health Service to stop dissuading first cousin marriage, incest. In Great Britain now, they are actively discouraging the National Health Service from discouraging incest, because Muslim immigrants, it is very common for first cousins to marry. And though they only make up 10% of the population, they've gotten clout in the country, and the Labour government there is afraid of being accused of racism. In Canada now, the police are referring to the trans shooter as female, though he was male, and they're not referring to him as trans female, just female. And the national media, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, has doctored the photos of the male shooter to make him look more feminine. And even the police, the first police car to show up at the shooting was covered in rainbow flags, and they have started referring to the shooter as a gun person, not a gunman. They don't have a First Amendment in Canada. They don't have a First Amendment in the UK. And we're seeing that in those countries that don't have a First Amendment, the progressive madness takes over among the elite in those countries, and then they impose it on everyone else. And you can't actually speak up and say the emperor has no clothes in these countries, as you can here, because you'll be thrown in jail. You're more likely to be thrown in jail in Great Britain these days for saying Muhammad was a nutter and not actually the prophet of God than you are to go stab someone on the streets of London. You stab someone on the streets of London, that you might get a slap on the wrist. You denounce the prophet Muhammad, or you say men can't become women, or that gay marriage is bad, they're going to send you to jail for hate speech. It's become absurd in the way the rights of the people of Great Britain have been degraded by the political class, all to avoid social unrest from an immigrant class that the people are more and more opposed to, and the politicians don't know what to do with. They caught the tiger by the tail, and they're afraid of letting go. So your rights have to be compromised in those countries now. Thankfully, not here. Guys, I have to confess something. I guess some would accuse me of latent homophobia or something. I watched the Olympics. I hadn't really tuned into the Olympics. The skeleton is my favorite thing to watch because it's the most insane sport. And I actually like to watch whatchamadiggy, the shuffleboard on ice one. I just, my son was asking me about that one yesterday. He's like, Dad, this is a real sport? I was like, yes. Once you get into it, you get obsessed with it. But I tried to watch the main NBC covers, and I'm sorry, the moment I started hearing the dudes on there talking about, here comes the twizzle of the ice skating dancer people, I was like, I'm out. I don't care what a twizzle is. I don't want to watch the twizzle. Let me go back and watch downhill skiing or something where someone has the potential to die, as opposed to that. I couldn't do it. Let me watch the hockey and the downhill skiing, and I want to watch the skeleton and the slalom, and I want to watch the people with guns on skates. That's awesome. I don't want to watch the twizzle and the twist and shout, twizzle, twirl, whatever on ice. I'll watch the women ice skaters, but nope. When they started talking about here comes the twizzle, I didn't know what the twizzle was, but it's apparently some sort of spin. And there's apparently a method to do a twizzle where you have to come out of the twizzle, and if you don't get the twizzle right, they twizzle away your points. And I was like, what does the candy have to do with this? I thought it was like twisted licorice. That's the Twizzler, though, not the twizzle. And I was out. Couldn't bring myself to do it. I actually like the Winter Olympics better than the Summer Olympics, but it's all like the sports where you could die while doing it. I will watch the guy on the skates who's doing the flip that was banned. I'm just want to see if he hurts himself. I'm intrigued, but it's like watching car wrecks potentially happening. Other than that, no. I don't want to watch twizzles on ice. I want you to go to Vision Computers today. Call them at 404-COMPUTER. Go to visioncomputers.com, and you can get new computers, and you can get their managed IT services. Here's one of the things. Let me just talk to you. Some of you have senior elderly parents who have computers, and they are the targets for scammers now. One of the great things with Vision Computers is if you get the managed IT service for your house, for your parent, they can get a phone number from Vision Computers where they can call. Same thing. You get somebody on the line in 15 seconds, and if you think you're being scammed, they can help you navigate it. Even if you got the caller calling and saying, hey, I'm at the hospital and my credit card's not working and I need money quick. You get Vision Computers on the phone, and they can help you navigate those scams and protect your parents or whoever you need, and they can keep your business up and going. Call them at 404-COMPUTER. Go to visioncomputers.com. If you buy a new computer with them, by the way, their managed IT service comes with it. 404-COMPUTE, visioncomputers.com. Tell them I sent you. You can save you a little more money. 404-COMPUTE, visioncomputers.com.